great to have you here. We've been talking a lot about police issues. We've been talking a lot about Seattle policy issues, the new mayor of Seattle, Katie Wilson, and just kind of what Seattle's going to look like in the next 5-10 years based on the policies that are taking place right now.
Heck, what it looks like today.
What it looks like today.
Because of the policies in place right now. We don't have to look down the tracks to see the problem, and the rails are coming up.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's definitely, it does feel like Seattle's kind of at this inflection point, and we're excited to talk to you because as the, representative for the police officers, you are not beholden to the same things that, say, a Chief Sean Barnes is.
That is correct.
If he wants to speak out against policies that the city that he might disagree with, he could get fired. That's not the case in your case. And talk a little bit about that. You represent the cops. He's their boss, but his boss is Katie Wilson.
His boss is the mayor.
So what is that relationship like then?
Well, I think the chief's I like the chief. I should say that.
We've had him in. He seems like a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice
and I've had good meetings with him. But he is, he works for the mayor, so he's got to kind of take her policies in her direction and kind of hand that out. Right. So I get to have a little bit more freedom and flexibility in what I can say and speak about the frustration of the members of the Seattle Police Officers Guild, which is all our officers, detectives, and sergeants.
Yeah.
So there's a extreme frustration on the street, right? We're short-staffed, we're stretched thin, and it really makes it difficult. We have an uphill battle in a lot of ways, and kind of like your last segment with these business owners. I mean, one of my biggest concerns going forward is honestly business flight.
Just people leaving because the policies in Seattle, whether it's for taxes or whether it's just being able to operate their business
enforcement,
without
all the things,
people in front of their business going to the bathroom on their door.
Right. So you have issues where the city attorney is there to enforce misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors. The issue is going to be if we, the city, if she is not competitive in that, around in comparison to surrounding cities, let's say within King County.
Sure. Let's look at Bellevue.
For example, Bellevue. All the surrounding cities have to do is just enforce their misdemeanors. Their felonies are going to go to the county level, right? So that's kind of less of an issue. But if Bellevue has a stance, or another surrounding city, if they have a city prosecutor who's going to enforce their misdemeanors, if they have then judges and prosecutors who are going to file and put these people away and serve some time.
Prevent them from coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
Crime is going to flourish where there's least resistance to it.
What makes us a soft target?
Yes.
Okay.
Right? The crime will come here. So if you steal a pair of jeans or a pair of pants in Bellevue and you serve 30 days in jail, you might not do that again. It sends a clear message.
Let me ask you a question about that, because you have an insight and you can speak to, in a way that, like when we had Chief Barnes on with us, he can't speak necessarily. This is not an insult to him, but that is a diplomatic position. He has to be a diplomat when he's speaking about everything that's happening with SPD, because his job is quite literally on the line.
Well, he's beholden to the policies and laws of the city, and that's as he should be.
But what I want to know is, from the rank and file, like, what is the feeling when you talk about just like your average SPD officer, when they are on the streets arresting the same people again and again and again, or they're being called out to? When somebody grows up dreaming of being a cop, you're probably not often thinking about having to deal with the people that they are now having to deal with on a daily basis in Seattle. Like, what does that do to the morale for the people that you represent?
Well, it's a difficult situation, right? And it's very frustrating. And it's just that where's the juice from the squeeze, right? So why are we arresting the same 10% of the people? Right? We've got to get away from this catch and release problem. The other issue is Seattle, a city of this size, we don't have our own misdemeanor jail. So we are beholden to policies from the King County Jail. We have an uphill battle of booking people into jail. So let's talk about the open air drug markets. Me driving by and seeing a puff of smoke is not enough. I have to see the drug. I have to see that. I have to have probable cause that there is at least suspected narcotics that they are consuming.
Yeah.
I make that arrest. They're going to say, I swallowed dope. That is now a medical decline to jail. I can't take them to jail. Now I have to take them to a hospital.
Explain that. What do you mean? That's just their get out of jail free card?
Yep. Same thing with
to say that.
It evolves. I mean, you see it on the street.
Word gets around the street pretty quickly amongst the community that's trying to avoid being arrested.
And this is kind of the flavor of the month or the year, whatever you want to say. Years ago, we used to do narcotics operations. This is prior to 2020, so there's a lot of thousands of people out there. We would make arrests on, say, 3rd Avenue, and somebody's in handcuffs, and somebody else would walk by, and they would whisper, out loud, they say, drug court, drug court, drug court. Meaning, say drug court, say you want a diversion, and now you're not going to jail. People don't want to go to jail because detox sucks. It's painful, right? It's going to feel like they're going to die. I mean, it's a horrific experience. But there's too easy of an excuse. So now what we have is we have a simple possession charge. Let's say it's not enough for dealing or distributing, right? So you see one pill on a foil with a torch, and they're smoking with a straw in their mouth. I make that arrest. It's a simple possession charge that isn't going to be charged, right? City attorney's not going to charge that.
Why is that not going to be charged? That's illegal.
Because
when I was growing up, we were afraid of getting caught with weed.
Because early on,
we get arrested.
Because in January, when this new administration came in, they started. It was very early on. I think Rance even broke it that there's basically a policy that we're going to divert. We're going to have diversion. We want to prioritize diversions. So now I've got.
I can see. I don't mean to interrupt you. I understand the frustration and the cavalcade of reoffending and the career criminals that are now. Like I said, the same 10% of people get arrested time and time again. But there's documented benefit of diversion as opposed to incarceration. But do we have to?
But where's the stick?
No, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
right.
I mean, because we look at these policies from this administration saying this is lunacy. Why do you keep doing this? There's evidence that these policies are better long term.
Sure, but I don't want to. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that we are going to benefit from taking simple users and throwing them in jail for years. That's not what I'm saying. But the catch and release isn't working. The short jail stints of hours to a day isn't doing anything.
Yeah.
Right? So can we find a way to couple that with actual, like, real treatment? Right? So what's happening is, to play this out, is that an officer sees drugs being smoked, they make that arrest, they say they swallowed dope. Okay, now there's a 4 to 6 hour observation period that I got to go to the hospital for. We work a 10-hour shift. Patrol works a 10-hour shift.
Do you have to stay, if you make that arrest, do you have to stay with that person for that 4 to 6 hours?
Yeah. So now we have a simple misdemeanor. We're to go back to the other business stuff, we're hardly making minimums. So we're short-staffed, we're stretched thin, and now I'm going to take 2 officers on a simple narcotics arrest for 6 to 8 hours of a 10-hour shift, all for this person to get booked in and maybe released later that day or the next day.
What's the
so when somebody calls in and you drive by an open-air drug market, and you call that in at 9 a.m., and you drive by the next day at 9 a.m., nothing's changed because the person that I might have arrested is already back out there.
They're back doing the same thing.
In the same place.
So what's the solution moving forward? I know it's a big question. I apologize. I know. And if you had a blank check in the ear of the mayor, what would get it done?
Ooh, I think that's probably a bigger question for the region. I don't know that all of this is going to fall on or should fall on Seattle at this point, right? I think,
but we are the soft target.
We are the soft target, right? So at some point, you've got to start enforcing your misdemeanors and be competitive with these other cities. And then my concern, going back to my original concern, is business flight. If I can't clean up the streets, if I can't have my officers clean up the streets, are you really going to browse downtown and look at a vacant storefront and say, you know what, I'm going to start a business here?
No.
I'm going to expand here, right? Instead, we're seeing the opposite. So you have a Bellevue, or pick another municipality surrounding here that just enforces their misdemeanors.
You know what's interesting about that is it's such a simple thing. The laws are already on the books.
Yeah.
You could just enforce the laws, and the cities would get better. But apparently Seattle doesn't have an appetite for enforcing these laws.
Well, they don't have the manpower. Is it a matter of being so shortly staffed?
No, that's it.
That's a component of it, sure.
But they don't enforce the laws.
But
that's the problem.
But the other problem is, if the laws are enforced, right, but then it's an uphill battle to book people into jail, and then they're released.
If you get why don't you see this problem in Bellevue? Like, why? What is Seattle? What
do they have
can
adequate
Seattle
police
send
force?
somebody to Bellevue?
I would say that they're probably a little bit better staffed than us, and I don't know their exact numbers.
Do they have a local misdemeanor jail that can put people in?
They have a different jail that they're using.
That's
right.
yeah.
So they're contracting with a different jail. They probably also have prosecutors and judges who are pushing forward these crimes and charging these crimes.
Is that not something that Seattle has?
No, I don't believe so. At least not in that extent. That's some of that's going to fall on Erica Adams as the new city attorney, and to see exactly what she's going to follow through with charges.
It's a matter of just
but then it also goes to the judges.
Is it a matter of overwhelming numbers for the city? Can they just not keep up with this? I mean, it's an easier, smaller sample size in Bellevue or one of these other smaller communities to do what needs to be done with just the volume of people here.
Sure,
because we're a soft target.
There's a backlog, and I think Erica Adams talked about that, and so did Ann Davison when she walked in. There's a backlog of cases, right? So that's that part of the issue too, is where you get into right. The prosecutor's got to figure out a way to get through these cases, this backlog, right? And some of that is probably just unfortunately not charging some of it.
What do you do for like, I've had friends who I have a lot of friends who are cops, but also former cops who, during all the protests and everything that has been happening these last 6 years, have just decided this job is too big of a liability for me and my family. And so they've moved into different careers. I have one friend in particular who was a police officer for, I think, 15 years and now runs an excavation company because it just became too big of a burden on his shoulders, and the job was not what he signed up for.
Too much risk, not enough reward.
Well, yeah, and it's a liability in places like, there are parts of our state that are going to go after cops for doing their job, and I think that's a massive problem. So, like, how do you, as the president of the Police Officers Guild, Seattle Police Officers Guild, how do you keep them motivated and excited and enthusiastic and hopeful that this is the best career choice for them? Because it should be. These guys are heroes. These guys and girls are heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, it is certainly frustrating. I think they really have to focus on what they can do. The drug stuff becomes completely overwhelming for them just because there's just no real way to clean that up. So then they need to focus on what they can do, right? And the arrests that they can make. And some of that's just not always easy. I don't have maybe the best answer for that, because it really depends on the officers and really what motivates them or what discourages them.
Sure.
Right. So some of that is kind of personal for them as to what keeps them here and going. Largely, I think we do attend calls that are rewarding, that are fulfilling, that we are saving some lives and we are making some differences. But then there is the other side of it that is discouraging, very discouraging.
How do you? We know that the numbers are one of the biggest issues facing the Seattle Police Department. Recruiting numbers and staffing, full staffing. Do these policies of this administration make it almost impossible to get new recruits to come in? Are they doing a good job? Are they bringing new people in?
We're bringing new people in. We have a lot of people in the pipeline, actually. So I will say that.
It's great.
So we are climbing back up that hill, right, to getting better staffed. But the problem of going back to, say, 2020 is you can't vilify this profession,
right,
and then lose hundreds of officers and then one day say, you know what, we need more cops.
Yeah.
Right?
And then act like they don't know why there's no cops.
You can't just turn that spigot back on immediately, right? So I think we've turned that spigot back on to a point, right? But now we've got to get people trained and out there and up to speed on everything. So that's difficult. But that also, those hundreds of officers didn't just fall off patrol. That also impacts investigations, which kind of goes back to your story or your caller before me.
Or business owners, yeah.
Can you? We just have a couple minutes left, but Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson has a pretty controversial stance in some people's opinions. I share that opinion in the way that she wants SPD to interact with federal agents who come into town. What's your take on that? Is with regards to ICE? Like, what position is that putting police officers in? What position is that putting the public in as a result of that relationship?
Well, it's putting SPOG members in the middle, where we don't need to be. All right, so we're becoming the political pawn in this, right? So the idea, let's go back, right? So you remember years ago, the Charlottesville incident?
Yeah,
right. So that protest, that riot or demonstration, right, came to Seattle after that. And we had two opposing groups. So we had a group that started, I think, in Westlake Park and one that started in Denny Park. It was our job as the police to not take a side, to remain apolitical, and just keep those two parties apart. Why? Because there's a flashpoint. They're going to get at it physically, and that's not safe for either side. Mm-hmm. How is this ICE controversy any different? You have, look at Minnesota, look at Portland. The danger becomes ICE has an operation that they can do, they have the authority to do, that we don't have the jurisdiction over.
To stop them from doing it.
We cannot stop them from doing it, right? So we can disagree with that mission, right? We can voice our displeasure in that. However, I think as officers, as SPOG members, we have an obligation to make sure that those two parties don't interact. Well, the danger, we know that if the demonstrators who are anti-ICE and federal officers, we know that that's a flashpoint.
Yeah, but is that because of the actions or the work habits, the sometimes criminality of how ICE operates? But you're not talking about two different protest groups. You're talking about a protest group. You're talking about a federal agency who's going out without identification, who's hiding their faces. I mean, you wouldn't expect Seattle Police Department to be interacting with the community without being identifiable, without wearing body cams, all these different things, right? So we're talking about, is the problem here how ICE is interacting with these communities, or the fact that Seattle Police Department is being asked to hold ICE accountable with regard to protecting the citizenry that pays Seattle Police Department?
I have no jurisdiction over ICE.
Let me pause you real fast, because this is a great question, and I don't want to short you on your response.
Can
you stick around for one more segment?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
On the other half of this break, or on the other side of this break, we're going to get Ken's response. One of the things that we're chatting about is Mayor Katie Wilson, Seattle. Her mandate that SPD become basically watchers of ICE. When ICE comes to town, SPD is going to go out there, and it's not quite clear what she's demanding that they do. And Kent was making the assessment just before the break that this kind of turns the police officers into political pawns. And Spike, you had a question before the break. Maybe you can reset that up, and then we can get Kent's response.
Yeah, because it's my understanding of the mayor, and it's first off a state policy and a city policy, that local resources are not used to enforce federal immigration policy. That's state law. That's city law. So that in itself would put the law enforcement community in Seattle at odds with federal agencies. And Kim is saying that it puts us at in direct conflict with federal agents. But it's my belief, and I don't think I'm wrong here, that the city of Seattle works for the citizens of the police department works for the citizens of Seattle. And if you find federal agents violating civil rights and liberties of Seattle's citizens, it's the city police department's job is to advocate and protect its citizenry from what it's clearly demonstrated as often overreach by ICE. I mean, take the example of the second shooting in Minneapolis. A guy is filming an officer, right? That's his civil right to film and protest. And an officer then pursues him across the street and confronts him as he's at a sidewalk, and escalates to what ended up being a fatal shooting. I mean, so what is the city of Seattle supposed to do for its citizens when ICE comes to town and breaks laws?
So take the Minneapolis example, okay? The city knows that protesters and ICE, that is going to be a flashpoint. What we should be doing, in my opinion, is maintaining public safety, letting the demonstrators demonstrate and exercise their First Amendment rights, understand ICE has an operation that we cannot interfere with. It is not our job to obstruct federal law enforcement.
I'm with you, and I fully agree with that. Enforcing federal immigration policy is their right to do so.
Right.
But what happens when that steps out of the bounds of enforcing policy? When they're confronting a protester, that's not enforcing immigration policy. That's violating the civil rights of a protester recording their actions.
Well, so that's where, again, that flashpoint exists, right? So it should be our job, just like on any other protests, where we have shown up, we remain apolitical,
Yeah, agreed.
and we keep the two parties apart.
You'll stop ICE from then going and confronting protesters?
Well, also you would stop protesters from infringing or
interfering in
a
operations.
political
As they should. As Seattle Police should. Yeah.
So what we're seeing, or what we saw in Minneapolis, and even from footage in Portland, is that you have anti-ICE protesters. Again, First Amendment rights, great. Don't have a problem with that. But we've got to do it safely. These are federal law enforcement officers that are going to act a certain way. And you're pushing them in a position where they're going to now deal with crowd management on top of the mission that they already have. I think it's inappropriate.
Well, it's inappropriate, and they're not trained for it.
Correct.
They're grossly undertrained.
Hence Minneapolis.
Yeah,
we
agreed.
Have all right. So in my opinion, we have 2 people killed in Minneapolis because police were sidelined. Why can't police remain apolitical, stand between, right? So now what you're doing is I don't have to condone the ICE operation, but we also have the department and the city acknowledging that they can't stop it. They don't have the jurisdiction over it, right? So I'm not saying the reporting the investigation of it, right? Look, we're going to respond to a call for service. We're going to have our body worn recording, right?
Yeah.
The idea
as you should.
that we are going to approach, depending on what the situation is, we're going to approach federal law enforcement and we're going to what? Require their ID? Compel them to be ID'd?
Yeah, I think, well, if the city law says that they're not allowed to wear masks, and that was just recently passed, federal agents aren't allowed
our
to
state
wear
law,
masks.
our city law is not going to impact federal, right? So we're passing these.
So is that a toothless law that the city can't say?
100%.
Yes.
It's virtue signaling. Why are we spending all this time in Olympia passing a state bill, right? Ferguson is bragging about signing a bill that says law enforcement can't wear masks. Okay, so I can't wear a mask. But we're using that to virtue signal to say
federal agencies have the right to.
We've talked about this on the show, right?
Right. They're not going to be able to. So they're not going to have any teeth on what the feds are doing.
The federal law has the right. Federal agencies have the right to come in without proper identification.
Yeah, I don't see how our state law is going to supersede what they're coming forward.
I need to read more on the issue, but it was my understanding that federal law. One of the issues with ICE is that they should be required. Then they're not required to wear badges, to wear identifications to who they are. The people come out that are completely dressed in black and have their faces covered, and there's no way to know if they're law enforcement or not.
Yeah,
and there's no way to protect the citizenry.
I think the problem is going to be sending us in to investigate federal law enforcement. Right, and that's not really our scope, right? I don't think that we can really, depending on the situation, do that safely, right? So if you're envisioning a small controlled situation where someone calls 911 and says, help, my so-and-so is being kidnapped, if we respond to a call for service and we see, well, that looks like a bunch of uniformed federal agents and such, right?
Well, what if it's not, though?
What
if it's an unmarked vehicle, which they always are?
Well, then again, I think what you're doing is you're responding to that call for service and you are conducting an investigation up until the point you realize, okay, this is a real operation here, right? So, if you're seeing some plainclothes people pull somebody into a car, that's entirely different. And I think you need to investigate up to the point.
But not stopping them.
If you learn that they're federal agents, I don't know that you have the authority to stop them. At what point are we interfering with federal agents?
You say I don't mean to be so confrontational, but you say if we learn they're federal agents, but we're not allowed to ask them to provide proof that they're federal agents?
I assume we can ask. I don't know that they will provide.
Well,
right, and this is putting us in the middle where things become unclear and confusing.
And this is why there's a funding shutdown in D.C. Because the Democrats want them to require federal officers to identify themselves, to be accountable, and there's pushback that requirement is being asked of them.
So my big concern here, though, when it relates to public safety, is I think we should be in the position of not allowing that flashpoint to exist.
No,
I don't want another Minneapolis.
You're spot on. We should separate the two groups. As much as we should stop protesters from interfering with federal operations, we should also stop federal operations from interfering with the civil rights of protesters.
Well, wouldn't that? I think what you're saying, Mr. Loux, wouldn't it be better if the situation that happened in Minneapolis, or like in the Renee Good or Alex Preddy situations, if police had been allowed to be the intermediary between the two, and those were both, as I understand it, those were both lawful investigations that that ICE was conducting. If the police are standing between ICE and the protesters, then somebody doesn't get shot. Right?
Precisely.
And so Seattle is not doing that. And so it does put you guys, like you were saying,
Minneapolis didn't do it.
Seattle, well, in the wake, they did decide hey, it would be a better idea for the safety of our citizens if Minneapolis
after two people were killed.
But after 2 people were killed. And what you're saying is,
we don't need to
let's
go there.
stop that from
Yeah,
happening
I'm
in the
with you.
first place.
We don't need to go there at all.
By not going there and turning you guys into political,
Pawns. Yeah.
pawns,
Yeah.
which I think you're totally right about.
I'd rather take the public safety route and
Yes.
keep everybody
Here you
safe.
have. Well put.
Yes. Kent Loux, Seattle Police Officers Guild president, we've taken a lot of your time, but we really appreciate it. And,
Thanks
this
for having
was
me.
really
Thanks,
insightful.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right.